Friends, Brian here for Yes You Can Play Guitar, and as promised, I'm going to start doing my series on what's in my pedal board. Now, for some of you out there, some guitar players, I might take you off a little bit. I'm not a big effects guy, and let me explain some of the basics in this video before we start moving on to the next in series of what I'm going to be putting out on what I use in my pedal board. So number one, for the most part, there's two types of effects. You have what are called rack mount effects that sit in a rack, and usually you have a foot controller of some sort, MIDI, otherwise, to control and switch the programs that you have in it. Now, being up front with rack effects, usually you have a little bit more versatility with what you can do and what you can program than with your basic pedals, okay? The other form of effects. Now we also have like floorboard effects and everything that's like a rack effect, but it has everything at your feet. As I'm explaining this to you guys, I must interject here. Really think about something a lot of people don't think about. When you're playing in the clubs, you're playing to people who are going to be drinking. There's going to be drunk people getting up on stage, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I have seen people with very expensive pedal boards, not pedal boards, but those effects units. So when you go out and you pay $1,800 for that really nice floorboard unit with all the effects and you can program and spend a lot of time on it. Not that I have anything against that, guys. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, I had a rack and I would program and chain all the effects units and everything. I spent my time doing that. But when you start playing a lot in clubs, you realize it's just not practical. And, you know, for some people, they get these really expensive floor units. And what happens? Beer gets spilled on it, or the connectors get stepped on. The adapters get stepped on by drunk people, maybe by yourself. And then what do? Your $1,800 floor unit. Some people get plastic covers over them. I just like to use pedals because they're built like tanks. And you know what? If something ever happens to one and you know which one it is, you take it out of your chain, get your signal set back up, and you might be out $100, maybe $200, but it's a lot better than $1,800. You heard it here. But I like to keep things really, really simple. And there's reasons for this. A wise man told me a long time ago, he said, hey, all you really need, and this was a guy who worked the clubs, had hundreds and hundreds of gigs under his belt. He said to me one day, he said, all you need is a good tube amp, and that might be changed now with some of the modeling amps, but this is what he told me. All you need is a good amp, a few pedals, a really good guitar, and your fingers. And over the years, as I was a working grunt, playing regionally in all the clubs, I learned, you know, that's true. So a couple things I want to point out to you with that. When you play live, if you're playing in your room, that's great. You know, you can program things and you can have a million pedals set up. That's no problem. But when you're playing live, you also have to think, what if something happens? What if my rig goes down? Then you have to start troubleshooting. So when I see some of these crazy pedal boards or rig setups that have all kinds of different effects in them or 50 different pedals, I'm like, the show's going to be put on pause when you have that momentum with the show going and all of a sudden something goes down and now you have to go through the entire signal and troubleshoot each pedal one by one or each unit one by one to see what's going on. It really can kill a show and it's very embarrassing on stage. Again, guys, why I started this YouTube channel was to discuss everything music, of course, but also I don't want you to make my mistakes. Okay? It's very embarrassing up on stage when you have to do that. In today's day and age, there's all kinds of pedal companies out there. When I was coming up in the late 80s, there was only a few real pedal companies that you could buy. Now remember, I'm not sponsored by any company. I'm not trying to promote any company. I'm not getting anything from any company to make these videos. These are just some of my standbys that always worked for me. Okay? So back in the day, we only had a few options of different pedals that we could buy. I like pedals that are built like tanks and stand the test of time of playing live. So we're going to go through this series and I'm going to explain to you a very basic principle of what you need to actually have a pedal board. Okay? Number one, you are going to need an actual pedal board. Now, one of the things as a musician that drives you nuts is when over the years, we get into these situations where we need money, our life changes, we think we're out of music, all kinds of things that can happen, and you've already invested in this gear, and then you sell it, and then you have to go back and rebuy it, and my God, it can drive you absolutely batty. I'm definitely in that boat now. But you need an actual pedal board. So I got this used from Pedal Train, okay? And it actually has the pedal board to put your pedal on. Okay? Now, okay, I have some of my Velcro tape that I use to put on here. Now this is also a two-tiered, this is a very small Pedal Train model. This is the Metro 24. And I told myself when I did my research, I don't want anything bigger than this because then I'm dealing with too many effects. So, with the Pedal Train, you can see two tiers here. Some people can put two pedals. If I wanted to, I could squeeze two pedals in on each tier. But I'm going to show you a video of my old pedal rig from about 11, 12 years ago. My effects loop's pretty simple. I used to have the big racks full of everything, and ultimately when it comes down to it in the end, it comes down to Boss foot pedal sweep. Again, I have to stress that if I'm in a working situation and someone prefers me to use a different type of effect rack or whatever, I'm all open to that. So, especially playing the local clubs here where sometimes there isn't the best security and you get a lot of inebriated people up on stage, I find Boss is the best for minimum damage and reliability. Real simple, runs through the effects loop. I'm running a gate on the effects loop, equalizer into harmony, then into chorus, then into delay, then into a reverb pedal. And I also have a channel switcher and I use a wah pedal. It was quite nice, but at the same time it was cluttery, and when you're playing live, a lot of people don't know this. Thank you for tuning into my channel so I can tell you, hit subscribe. It's free. It's actually 1 calorie of energy to click subscribe, and it helps me out a lot. When you're playing live and you're starting to have to reach over in the middle of a song to hit certain pedals, then you accidentally hit other pedals. So I'm not a fan of the double-tiered pedal boards. So when I put mine on, I'm going to line them up one by one. And also, another thing a lot of people don't know about is that you have to have an electricity supply, power supply, going to your board. You can get some pedal boards now that have a power supply that you can plug in and then power the rest of the pedals. But it's very important to have a power supply. So again, being old school, you're going to look at something like this. It's an adapter. It goes to a plug. It'll have some length to it. And then you can plug it in to a daisy train of the adapter plugs in here, and each one of these can plug into the pedals to provide them power. And also, in between your pedals, you want to have really good quality connectors. There's a lot of different types of connectors you can get. Really get good small connectors. There's a lot of cheap ones you can get really cheap in a music store, but make sure you get really good high quality connectors. Because if you get cheap, when they're plugged in, if they get damaged while you're playing, if you're stepping on pedals, you misstep, you accidentally step on one of these connectors and they break, your rig's gonna go down. And you're gonna be there going, oh no, now I gotta troubleshoot this in front of 300 people that got into the band and now they don't know what's going on. I'm telling you guys, simple is better. If you can afford to have a road crew and techs working for you, if something goes down, then it's their problem. But being a working grunt over the years, in a lot of bands, I like simple, and simple is good. Also, another thing I'd like to point out too, the range and effects that you can get are, in price, can really vary between product and product. Now, there are some effects, namely delays, that, you know, it might be worth spending a little bit more money on to have a bit more options. But for the most part, with some of the effects, if we look at, you know, your modulation effects, if you look at your reverbs or your chorus, can someone at the back of the room really tell the difference between a really high-end chorus effect and an okay chorus effect? Something to think about too. This is just a different perspective that a lot of people don't think about, a lot of beginners don't know about, and this is why I appreciate you guys coming to my channel. So, you want to get a pedal board, you want to have good connectors for your pedals, and you want to have the power supply with an adapter and a daisy train for the pedals. Now there's so many different types of pedals out there, especially if you mix and match and get different kinds, they might have different power requirements, so they might not all work on the same daisy train. You might want to think of that too when you're spending money into your pedals or your effects. Remember, practice hard, but practice smart. We're going to see you in the next video of this series. We'll see you soon.